Welcome back to Forum TV. And one of the pillars here at the National Forum of Black Public Administrators has to be public policy, which is integral to many of the public administrators here at conference. Joining us now to talk about public safety in particular, Dr. Cedrick Alexander. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me with you here today.
Now, you have over 40 years of policing experience or dealing with public safety. What would you say right now is missing across the country in terms of developing policy that will actually benefit our communities?
Well, you know, the challenge that I think if you think about in terms of public safety, more specifically policing, you have to put it in a historical context that this has been a long-standing issue ever since the beginning of time as it relates to policing, particularly in communities of colors and more specifically in black communities. So I think one of the biggest challenges is still building that trust between police and community. Because if we go back historically, relationships in the black community and police have really never been good. For a variety of different reasons that are systemically out of touch for a lot of people really it's all systems related in terms of racism and discrimination in this country, quite frankly. But we all have had to learn how to maneuver through that. And over the years, police certainly have done some things to change the way they have done business in the past, but there's still so much work still to be done around issues, particularly around serving those in communities that are challenged, and even communities that are not challenged, just communities of color, period. But I think one thing that is going to make a difference going forward, and that's something to your question that you're asking more specifically, is that we still have to build those relationships between police and community, because every time something negative happens, whether it's a Michael Brown, whether it's a George Floyd, whether it's Tamir Rice, whether it's a Sandra Bland, whatever it is, it opened up those old wounds again.
Right.
And the perception of how people internalize of what actually occurred that is eventually disclosed that shows some misdeeds on the part of policing, it makes it just that much harder for policing across the country, particularly in departments that are really trying and working very hard to do the right thing by writing new policies, being very specific and intentional around what expectations are for policing in terms of their training and building those relationships. But every time something bad happens, negative happens, and somebody go out there and do something foolish, then it just really, it really sets us all back 100 years and we start all over again. So I think you talk about policy as well too. It has to be more than just written policy. It really has to be policy of the heart, and that is being humane and being decent towards each other. And inasmuch we have great police officers out there that are trying to do this incredible work, we have to make sure that we keep them trained, keep them accountable, but we also have to be supportive of them, because it is a very challenging job that they do at times. And the other side of that is police, the profession itself, the individuals who make up that profession also have to be sensitive and empathetic and patient and caring to people who live very challenging lives in their communities every day. And it's bridging that relationship, but quite frankly, police have more the responsibility, in my opinion, because we are the ones who are paid public servants. And you know that job is going to be tough when you take it on. But that in no kind of way means that as a police official or a person who enforces the law that you should be mistreated, because you shouldn't be either. So there has to be a mutual respect between police and community. But police certainly do have the awesome responsibility of leading.
That is a very, bless you.
Excuse me.
That is a very difficult balance. You spoke about something I think that's very central to this particular topic, people being able to still support police officers, but also carrying the weight when something grave does happen really anywhere in our nation. And it does, I think it's fair to say, set a lot of people back each time something happens. And so what we've seen from police departments, I think many of them, is a focus on community policing specifically. We've seen specific volunteer days or celebration days like National Night Out, where you see communities and police officers there together having a great time. But the progression hasn't quite advanced as much as some people would like, and that all boils back down to trust. And so is there more that can be done to increase that trust?
Well, you know, to have a national night out is something that occurs once a year.
Right.
To have coffee with a cop is something that happens
Shop
once.
with a cop
Shop
during
with a
Christmas.
cop, coffee with a cop. Those are great gestures, but they don't change the history and still what has to happen every day to build those relationships. Those are in the moment, feel good kind of things. If you do coffee with a cop, you can go there every week, and it'll be Mr. Jones and Mrs. Jones who come to the meeting, and you'll see the same faces over and over. We can say, hey, we had coffee with the community, or the community had coffee with us. But the reality of it is people who need to be at those types of functions don't come because those are the ones who still don't have the ability or have a reason to feel that they can trust their police department. See, a lot of this is hinged to history. And people will say, well, hey, let's forget about the history. Let's forget about what happened in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. That's in the past. No, it's not. If those stories still permeate your communities and those interactions are negatives and people talking about how they were stopped and how they were treated, how they were talked to, spoken to, or whatever the case may happen to be. And I always tell police officers, you have to remember that a lot of people out in our community across the country, I don't care what community you're in, there are times when people have met the police for the first time in their life, never had an engagement with police. That traffic stop or that call to their home because their home was broken into, and whatever impression we leave is what they leave there with. And if people already have in mind that police are bad, police negative, they're going to hurt you, bada bing, bada bang, and we go in and we don't go in with a servant type of attitude, if you will. It just continues to perpetuate. Policing is a hard job. It all shouldn't be on police.
Correct.
But police have a very heavy responsibility to understand that how people feel about police in communities of color across this country is not rooted in right now. It's rooted in history. So we got to work, but first we got to acknowledge that we can be better, we can do better, and it has to go beyond a coffee and a cop. It has to be truly building those relationships out there every day. Every time you go in, you knock on a door, you go to that person's house, or you have a traffic stop, or there's interaction somewhere, we always should be on our best. We're here, we're public servants, we're here to serve. How can we help you? And it doesn't mean that you have to be mistreated as a police officer, because you shouldn't. There's mutual respect. But at the same time, you don't use your authority that has been given to you to overwhelm or overpower people because your ego is bruised, right? So I've been around for a long time. I've chiefed in the North, South. I've been police officer in several cities across this country. And I know how tough it is. And, I've been cursed out. I've been called names, and so forth, and trying to do the right thing. But what I can't do, I can't reduce myself to that because I'm a professional. I always have to be a professional. But we're also in a very important time in America's history right now where a lot of young people, particularly younger population, they have no interest in being in policing. And that's why you're seeing a great number of police departments struggling to hire, struggling to retain, as they're going through attrition. And a lot of those attitudes of young people not wanting to be in policing is rooted in the fact of how they have seen, heard, perceived from their friends through their own experience of how they see police and how they treat people. And they don't want to be part of that. Now, you will have some police unions put you under the impression, well, nobody want to be the police because police are denigrated and they're beat down. Well, they didn't get there by themselves. People feel that way for a reason. And if you go back and you look through even recent history, and you still look in communities that still struggle with these unfortunate incidents that we see, that you report on, that happen nationally, it just furthers make it just that much harder of a job. But I think what's going to be critically important going forward, two things I think are going to be critically important to bridge that gap and to supplant those losses that you're going to have of personnel. We have to integrate into policing more technology in order to assist us in the work that we do. And the other piece is we have to continue to build those relationships in communities as well. So, and that's going to be real. That's going to be the real big piece, is really building the relationship, because it has to be a partnership between police and community.
Something you touched on briefly, and I've heard this over the years. Police officers reference themselves as brothers in blue. And so, considering officers who are black in particular, do you think that it is harder for them right now, being an officer who is black and having a responsibility to their community, but also having a responsibility to their fellow police officers as well?
Well, to me, it's not, and I've been around a long time. The younger kids that are coming on board today, they have a very different attitude, white and black, blue and green. They have a very different attitude towards communities than in my earlier generation, right? And most of these kids have already had gay friends, black friends, white friends, blue friends. They've got all kind of friends even before they ever come into this job, because they have had a chance to assimilate much broader. And technology and internet has played a significant part of that. You can grow up somewhere in rural Alabama in an all-white community somewhere, but if you have an internet service, you probably got friends all around the globe that you're friends with, right? And so going into now an environment where you shift from being in this predominantly black community to a more diverse community, or a predominantly white community, a more diverse community, is an easier transition for them. And they don't feel this propensity to feel like you're with them or you're with us. You either with right or you're with wrong. You follow what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Because there's no difference. Yes, you and I work together. We have to go out here. We have to serve. We depend on each other to get through the day, to get through the shift, and do the things we need to protect ourselves if that becomes the case. But we also have a responsibility to the community that we serve. So it's not about us against them, right? It's about us doing what is right regardless of what community that we're in. And yes, I've heard over the years, being a black officer is tougher for them, particularly with their white counterpart in predominantly white police departments. You're with them or you're with us. No, I'm with what's right. And if you can't line up with that, then I'm not lining up with you. And it's the same way with the community. You're with us in the community or you're with those police officers over there. No, I'm lining up with what is right in that moment. We have to be legal, we have to be constitutional, and we have to be respectful. Those are the three important elements to me in order to do this job regardless of who you are. And I think, this whole notion, well, to be a police officer, you have to live in the neighborhood. No, you don't. It's not about where you live physically. It's where you live in your heart, how you feel about people. You can live 40 miles out, I could care less. But when you come into the city, my expectation is that you have a concern, a care, an empathy for people. You care about people. But this whole notion you have to live here, that doesn't make you like people. That's something that you just don't it has a lot to do with your character even before you come to this job.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alexander, for all of your insight here on
Yeah.
Forum TV at conference. You sit on
Yeah.
the panel for the federal public policy panel, actually.
Yeah.
And so just shaping the mindset of the public administrators here, we really appreciate
Right.
you.
Thank you very much for having me.